is visible, right? Or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, good morning. So, what we have discussed yesterday, we reached up to this point that for a quantum particle, we need to consider, we have to define, or we have to express, we have to describe by a mathematical function, complex function psi, and that can be function of position vector as well as time. That is called as a physical state, and that is governed by that equation or dynamics of the quantum particle is governed by a famous Schrodinger wave equation. And so the time dependent part can be expressed like exponential sinusoidal, where E is equivalent to a total energy of the quantum particle or quantum system. And then spatial function psi r we have to find. We are sure that time dependent function will be this one, but spatial function that actually depends on the type of potential distribution. So in the Schrodinger wave equation, potential distribution is there. That is also position dependent, and we have considered that is actually time independent. So this psi rt can be expressed as shown in equation 29, and in one dimension, where we are restricting our motion of quantum particle only in x direction, then this is just one dimension case, we can write down like this. And they are also potential, if it is one dimensional restriction, so we have to consider the potential variation along x direction. So psi is something we have to understand bit more. So bit more means basically psi is a mathematical function and complex function, that is fine. But how we can extract practical information out of psi? This mathematical expression is given. Suppose we are doing some measurement of a quantum particle. That can be momentum, that can be position, that can be energy, that can be anything. So if we want to measure, we'll get our experimental measurement setup will give some value. But what would be that value? What would be that expectation of that value? That can be found if you define certain kind of operator for that corresponding to that type of measurement. If it is a momentum operator, if it is position operator, if it is energy operator, you have to mathematically operate on this wave function. Then you should be able to predict what is the value you are going to get. So that is the whole idea of quantum mechanics and quantum technology, quantum applications. So this psi is the heart of the entire thing, and the measurement which we do in the lab space using experimental setup. So that measurement for a quantum system or quantum particle, that can be predicted if we have one-to-one corresponding operator, which operator, if you operates on this psi, then as a eigenvalue, you can get the expected result. You can actually predict that what you are going to measure, what you are going to find. But before that, you need to know the property of this psi, that physical state property, mathematical property, or property in the sense, if you are using it for mathematical operation, it should follow certain kind of mathematical rule, mathematical properties. So what are those rules? We'll be just discussing now today. Okay, so now properties of psi. First thing is that we mentioned earlier that this psi must be normalized. So when we are discussing about the probability density, that at any position or at any instant of time, to find the particle at that position, at that instant of time, we define as a probability density called P of RT. And this is since density, if you just integrate over volume, entire space, you must get somewhere. So you are integrating entire space. That means there is a chance, there is a 100% chance that you will find that particle. So if you integrate this, and you know this probability density according to the Copenhagen interpretation, that is this wave function. If you have, it is a complex one, right? So if you take complex conjugate and multiply it, then you get psi square, psi mod square. So that is actually equivalent to probability density. That is according to the definition of the quantum mechanics, Copenhagen interpretation. So instead of dV, we just in three-dimensional differential element, we just write a dqr. Sometimes you don't need to keep the vector here, it's kind of volume basically. So it is a scalar and it is an integration, you don't need to put a vector here at all. But I just mentioned that this coming from R here, so I put here. So if you integrate the probability density over entire space, the probability, maximum probability is 1. So we write 1. So this is the rule. So we consider as a certain kind of normalization that can be clearer in course of time now. Now you see, this is time dependent. This is also time dependent. Now this time dependent and you are integrating over space, whether it will be time dependent or not. So that probability of entire volume, if you are probability density, you are integrating over entire volume, whether that will be time dependent or not. Obviously that will not be time dependent, because you cannot say that in next instant of time the probability is dropped to 0.9, even though you are integrating over entire space. That means where is gone that 0.1 probability? If you are getting 0.9, 0.1, where it will go? So that means this has to be time independent. So that is actually constant. That is universally true. All the time this is true. How that is true? You know that the psi has a wave time dependent function exponential of I minus I e t by h card omega. But basically that is minus I h card omega t. Omega t basically. That is e equal to h card omega, h card cancel. So that means omega t basically, I omega t. So if you take complex conjugate of the same, because you know this theta t function, this is a theta t function, and this can be decomposed into psi r and theta t, as we have expressed here, that psi can be represented as like this. This is the time dependent portion. So if you take a complex conjugate, that means it will be plus. So if you multiply them, then this time dependent part will go. So that is clear that this thing is time independent. So we write this 31 can be written down like this. So psi r mod square dqr. So you don't need to bother about what is time dependent part is there, though you know what it is. So this thing actually called normalization condition of normalization. So you can have any wave function that satisfy Maxwell's equation. That is not enough. The solution should satisfy these also, so that you can actually predict that, okay, this is the universally true. No? So if you are integrating entire space, the probability must be 1. So this is another condition. So psi has a first and foremost important condition is that the psi has to be normalized. Clear? Now you can actually extend that into 1D problem. So 1D problem means, so you are restricting your motion along x direction only. So we write this psi x square dx must be 1. That means this quantum particle that in one dimension you can actually define that is actually probability density. So probability density per unit length, you would say. They are probability density per unit volume, and this is probability density per unit length. So dimension is different. So you should keep in mind whenever you are solving any problem. So you should not write that probability per unit per centimeter cube. Here actually per centimeter or per meter you have to write. Okay. Now, so that is one thing gone. And next thing is that suppose you have any two wave functions, psi r and phi r, for the same quantum particle, same quantum system, you have two different wave functions, and both are actually can be your solutions from Schrödinger wave equation. They are said to be orthogonal, and normally it's supposed to be, we'll see that normally any solutions coming out of Schrödinger wave equation, if they are solution for same quantum system, they must be orthogonal, and orthogonal means this has to be satisfied like this. This equation has to be satisfied. So that means psi and phi, they are two different wave function. And if you multiply and integrate over entire space, if they are orthogonal at all, then that has to be 0. So, you know, this is something orthogonality means, you know, if something, suppose a force actually acting on a body and its motion is in perpendicular direction, then you know the work done, that F dot S, so dot product if you take, normally that is 0. Because they are force you are applying in the perpendicular direction, the motion happening in the other direction, so their angle is 90 degrees, so you are not really working on it, because the direction you are forcing, it is moving other direction, so your work is not performing. So that is how that is happening, because it is perpendicular, just orthogonal. So here also, to define that orthogonality, you have a distribution of psi, position dependent distribution. It can be time dependent. Time dependent, of course, it will be removed as expressed earlier, and another phi RT. So if you integrate and if you find that they are overlap, this is actually, you can call that, because this is something, if you are considering this is also scalar and this is also scalar, they are function of r, that is fine, but they are scalar. And if you are multiplying, the wave function itself is a scalar, as of now we are considering. So if you multiply every point and then you sum up, then if you find their the total sum is 0, then we say that they are actually orthogonal to each other. So this orthogonality condition is valid for the wave functions, whatever you are getting solution from the Schrödinger wave equation. So again, in one-dimensional case, this r can be replaced as x. And you remember that this is psi star and phi, so that you get somewhat real value. It may not be, but it is normally psi star and phi r, it is written just to get rid of time-dependent part. Okay, time-dependent part normally sinusoidal things. So here still we put this, whatever phase is there, that has to be also counted. If there is a phase relationship is there, because it's a wave function. Wave function has some kind of phase, and that phase you can express only in complex form. So that thing also has to be included. Right. So now you have two conditions. One is the normalization condition has to be fulfilled, and there are another condition called orthogonality condition. So normalization condition, orthogonality condition. So together actually it satisfies for your wave function solution. And another property, it can be a superposition state. This psi can be a superposition state. So when you say superposition, what does it mean? Superposition means superposition of two different things. I think that this word is known to you, that if something imposed and another thing also imposed, and total effect is called superposition. But this psi can be a solution of Schrödinger wave equation, but it can be a superposition of other state. How that is very clear here. A wave function is said to be in a superposition state if it can be written as a non-factorizable, this is very important, non-factorizable linear combination of two or more orthogonal wave functions. Suppose if this psi so-called wave function, you are expressing in this form. C1 times psi1, one wave function, and C2 times psi2, another wave function, C3 times psi3, another wave function, plus you can have any number. So that means this C1, C2, C3, you can imagine that this psi1, psi2, psi3, they are actually eigenfunctions. Okay, so they are solutions of Schrodinger wave equation. But if you take some certain kind of weightage of psi1 by c1, psi2 by c2, psi3 by c3, and if you add them, that will be called as a superposition state. And if, only if, this thing no way can be expressed is the multiplication of two things. So it is just linearly added, but you cannot factor it. You cannot express this in terms of two factors. So if that is the case, if psi rt is expressed in this form in terms of eigenfunction with certain weightage, then it is called superposition state. Okay, but this superposition state, normally we don't say this is eigenfunction. Eigenfunction is the original solution. That means actually the eigen means actually you can say the eigen word is used in the sense of that fundamental. These are actually fundamental solutions, I think. So most simplest solution, I would say. Most simplest solutions is defined by eigen function, and that eigenfunctions are psi1, psi2, all are satisfying. And you cannot, if you add them, you cannot factor them, and or this psi1 cannot be expressed into is a factor of two other eigenfunctions. That is actually eigen. That is actually fundamental. So in that case, this is how we consider that this is superposition state. Yes. Yeah.
When we say linear combination, that itself takes this form, right? So why are we specifically saying non-factorizable?
So because that is what. So any linear combination means this is for sure. If you have all the solutions are there, you are just taking linear combination, and then this you are getting a value. But that cannot be that is actually a wave function actually. That can be also a solution of the Schrodinger wave equation, no doubt about it. Right? Linear combination can be a solution of Schrodinger wave equation because they are all are solutions of the Schrodinger wave equation. That is true, linear. But thing is that if this thing somehow you can factor it, certain solutions you are getting and you can factor it, then we cannot call that as another function which is actually solution of Schrodinger wave equation. So that is actually this non-factorizable things will come later. That is very important when we will be learning the entanglement. So there one condition will be there that two quantum particles, when they will be called entangled, if you cannot actually express them with a wave function which can be factored into two. So that is actually most important. So you can express this one, but this psi1, psi2, psi3 has to be very eigen fundamental. Then only this is called superposition state. Otherwise, just a linear combination. Okay, is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now the eigenfunctions here, just I pointed out the eigenfunctions of the Hamiltonian are normalized. This eigenfunction psi1, psi2, psi3. You have to, you know that they are eigenfunctions and they have to be normalized, and they themselves are orthogonal. That means whenever this is property, whenever you are getting a solution, eigenfunction solutions you are getting from Schrodinger wave equation, they have to be orthogonal. Orthogonal means they should have this type of, if this is one solution psi1 and phi you are considering another one psi2, and if they are different, and then if you just multiply and integrate over entire space, then you must get 0. So that means all these psi1, psi2, psi3, their solution from Schrodinger wave equation, they have to satisfy this orthogonality condition. And orthogonality condition means this and this has to be 0, but if m equal to n, that means they are same function, then what would be the value? That means that if m equal to n means that will become psi m mod square. So psi m mod square means how much? 32 equation, that should be 1. So we can together we can write that this psi m star multiplied by psi nr and integration over entire volume, that should be equal to delta mn. So this delta mn is called Kronecker delta function. When m equal to n, then it is 1, otherwise it is 0. It's called Kronecker delta function. And this is, since together actually it is showing it is actually satisfying orthogonality condition and also normalization. So that's why it is called this is orthonormality condition. So if it is simple orthogonal, then we can write this equation. If it is normalized, the wave functions are normalized, we can write down equation 32. And then if they are all eigenfunction solution coming out of Schrodinger wave equation, they have to satisfy this equation. So that is called orthonormality condition. So you should not just, I put a note here, you should not just confuse with Kronecker delta function with the Dirac delta function. You know, Dirac delta function is defined as a delta x. It is something like a function, continuous function. But the property is that if you integrate over, if it is one dimension, if it is integrated over entire length, then it should be 1. However, delta x will be 0 everywhere except at x equal to 0. So that is the difference actually. It is similar. First, it was actually demonstrated this one, and from there to satisfy this, we introduce this type of Kronecker delta function. Okay. So now next. Now this is one interesting thing that will be frequently using this term called Hilbert space. The eigenfunctions span in Hilbert space. So we understand eigenfunctions, and eigenfunctions are orthonormal, and their linear combination can create a superposition state, and that can exist. Superposition state can exist in a quantum system. So all the eigenfunctions with their weightage, they can superimpose, and that type of state also exists. And then next thing is that the eigenfunctions span in Hilbert space. So this is actually a little bit of perhaps you have learned in linear algebra. Very little thing I will discuss here, because all these quantum things, analysis, mathematical derivation, etc., they heavily dependent on linear algebra, linear operation. No nonlinearity will be there. So it's a first part of your linear algebra course. If you have learned that about the so-called n-dimensional vector space. Okay, so that is how it is useful here. I'll discuss now in this slide. So you see, the eigenfunctions of the Hamiltonian form a complete basis, so that at a given time set equal to 0. Okay, any arbitrary wave function psi can always be written as any arbitrary function. Earlier we are saying about superposition, but any of them, if you try to express, they can be expressed, they can be spanned or expanded into series of values. That means it's a sum. So Cn is the coefficient of or weightage of a eigenfunction of, that is actually n. So n equal to 1, n here also psi n will be equal to psi 1. And if it is t equal to 0, so at particular instant of time, say you define that time instant is 0, then that wave function can be expressed, any arbitrary function can be expressed in the linear combination of eigenfunctions with some weightage. Okay, that is one property of the wave function, right? That is still we are residing on quantum solutions from the Schrodinger equation. And this Cn, according to the rule of quantum mechanics, Cn can be a complex number. It's a complex. Okay, so that means it can have some kind of phase. That means whenever you are adding any complex number, it will have some real value, and then it can be multiplied by some exponential factor. So that is called phase. So that can be a complex. Now, orthonormality of eigenfunctions, that means whatever we discussed in equation 35, that is the orthonormality condition. So implies that normalization condition satisfied only when, suppose you want to normalize this one. This is a wave function, any wave function that can be normalized again. So if you normalize, that means you have to take complex conjugate of this one and you multiply with the original one. So once you multiply with the original one, then you will get, you see, psi Cn, Cn star, and psi n star one term will be coming. So that means if you multiply psi n into psi n star and you integrate according to the orthonormality condition, then you get Cn square. But at the same time, you will get also cross multiplications. That means there will be some overlap where psi n star multiplied by psi n dash star, something like this term will be coming. This type of things will be coming, because whenever you are multiplying a series, psi 1, psi 2, psi 3, C1 multiplications, of course, and then you are taking complex conjugate and again you are multiplying, then you will be getting the just kind of a plus b, a square, b square, then a 2 plus 2ab type things will come, a plus b into a plus b if you are multiplying. So those cross functions, when you integrate, they're supposed to be zero according to the orthonormality condition. So that means if this psi n is going to be your eigenfunctions, then any wave function, if any superposition state you are expressing like that, that need to be again normalized, and that normalization is condition is that the coefficient square, if you add them together, then what you get, it should be 1. Okay, this is very interesting. Why this is coming 1, you should know also. Suppose you have your all the eigenfunctions are there, and all these eigenfunctions actually, it's suppose psi 1, psi 2, psi 3 is there. Now I want to know what is the probability of psi 1. Then it will be C1 square. Then probability of psi 2, that means psi 2 into psi 2 star, that actually coming with C2 square. So all the probability, if you add all the probabilities of all individual eigenfunctions, if you add, then you will get again total probability must be equal to 1, because that is actually presenting the same quantum particle. Whatever wave function we are representing here, that actually represents same quantum particle. So finding of this quantum particle also should be 1 in the entire space, right? So this condition has to be fulfilled. Now, so whenever you are just expanding a wave function in this form, then that has to be normalized. That normalization condition is this one, right? And that is the orthonormality condition that we are expressing at a particular instant of time, that is called t equal to 0 at that instant. But suppose you have you want to know, okay, this is at time t equal to 0. What happens to this wave function as time goes on? Time evolution, time dependent evolution of this wave function. This is at t equal to 0, okay, absolutely fine, we are getting like this. Now, if I write down psi r as a function of t now, psi r t, then what we write here? This psi n also, individual wave function, eigenfunctions, actually will have a time dependent variation. So if it is nth function, oh, I think it is a typo error. This t should not be there because I have factored it. So psi n are associated energy dependent oscillations will be exponential minus I E1 En t by h cut. So psi 1 it is E1, psi 2 it will be E2. So psi 1 will vary of this function with energy will be equal to E1, psi 2 will be E2, psi 3 will be E3. So individual eigenfunction will have their own solution for eigenenergy, and their coefficient is used for how much weightage they are contributing to build psi RT. Of course, this Cn, this coefficient, whatever weightage you have given at t equal to 0, that weightage will not change. Only change is the time dependent evolution. So once at t equal to 0, you are expressing that at t equal to some other instant of time, you can find what is the status of the psi RT. So this will be like this. So you can imagine now, you can try to visualize now. You just imagine a particular wave function, it has a particular time dependent function is there, another eigenfunction, it is evolving with its own energy function, and another psi 3, psi 4, so everything. They are independently varying sinusoidally, right? And their superposition gives you certain kind of things. It's a kind of, you can imagine that different harmonics are there. It's like a Fourier expansion. Different harmonics are there and you are getting a superposition. So at t equal to 0, whatever superposition you get, at t equal to some other instant, you see they evolved differently because their energy is different, right? First wave function will be evolving with certain frequency and second one will be evolving other frequency. So in that case, what will happen? The psi RT, that shape, everything will be changed now. Okay, but you can actually define, if you know the property of individual wave functions, then you can find what is the value of this one in course of time evolution, right? So now next thing, now you see, so now we will try to relate mathematics of this, all this concept we discussed here for wave function, that is solved from Schrodinger wave equation. Now their property is somewhat clearer to us, that all this has to be satisfied. Okay, then mathematics, why we are doing all this? Because if we can shape our wave function which follow all this property, then we can actually use our regular mathematical tools to find. For example, I said that if you operate on a wave function, then you can find what is the value you can expect for your experimental result. So similarly, that operation, whenever you are doing any operation, that is a mathematical operation. So you need a mathematical operation to predict the experimental results. So the mathematical operations, we have various methods are there, and one method is that all the principles we use in linear algebra. Okay, so those linear algebra principles is a useful tool to understand this wave function and quantum system. So linear algebra, the first thing is that you consider a vector space. So vector space means, you know, that normally we have a one-dimension vector and then vector in 2 dimensions and then vector in 3 dimensions. That is our physically we understand from our geometry. That in 3 dimensions, any vector is there, we have x component, we have y component, we can z component. But linear algebra, if you study, then you will find that you can consider a vector which can be decomposed into n dimensions. And those n dimensions, along those dimensions, you can consider up to 1, 2, 3, 4 up to n. It can be n can be very large, and each of these direction you have a unit vector called basis vectors, a1, a2, a3 up to an. So we can call it as a n-dimensional vector space. But that vector that will be called as a vector space, perfect vector space, that should have the following property. What is that property? AI dot aj should be again this Kronecker delta function, delta ij. That means when I equal to j, then you will be getting 1. And when I not equal to j, then you will get 0. In our regular vector algebra, we know that suppose ijk 3 dimension, that we know that I and j, they are 90 degree to each other. So if you take a dot product, normally you will get, if it is x direction and if it is y direction, a x dot a y, it will be 0. And if it is x, it is also x, that means x square, that will be unit vector, 1 you will be getting. But here we are considering n dimensions, but n different unit vectors, but all these unit vectors, they should satisfy this condition. So that means it is very difficult to visualize. We are considering n dimensions such that they are orthogonal unit vector, all are orthogonal direction. Okay, that's something we are considering for mathematical purpose. For example, this is whenever someone learn linear algebra, then probably people little bit wonder why these abstract all these n-dimensional thing we need to consider. But you will see that that tool is very much effective to understand quantum mechanics, to manipulate quantum mechanical behavior. Okay, so such that arbitrary unit vector, and this is also another condition, that any arbitrary unit vector, suppose that vector space is there, in that vector space you want to consider another unit vector. That unit vector again you can express in this form. You can get some kind of weightage of all other unit vectors which is existing here. Suppose this alpha is not along one of these axes, along one of these direction, arbitrary direction, and that arbitrary direction, that unit vector, can be again expressed in terms of whatever original basis vectors. So these are basis vector and this is a arbitrary unit vectors. So arbitrary unit vectors can be decomposed into basis vectors component. So the basis vector components, that means C1 is the basis vector component, Ci. So if I equal to 1, the basis vector in that direction, what is the component? I equal to 2, that direction, what is the component? So all that you can decompose into different components according to the basis vector. It's the same geometry, whatever we learn for our vector algebra in 3 dimensions. Okay, so in that case, since alpha has to be again unit vector, need to be unit vector, then what does it mean? That if you take a dot product with again alpha, then you're supposed to get 1. Indeed, if you just try to get a dot product of this, then you will get all these type of terms will be coming in. If you multiply alpha dot alpha, if they are complex, then you have to take complex conjugate, of course, and then you multiply, then all these terms will be coming. When I equal to j, that will be 1. When I not equal to j, that will be 0. So when I equal to j, then only you will be getting C1 square. 2 terms will be multiplied. C1 A1 and C1 A1, C1 star, A1 star. A1 is the unit vector, that should not be star. So that is the condition, Ci square equal to 1. Right? So now you see, in linear algebra, what we learn for n-dimensional vector space, that vector space, actually the basis vectors follows this, and that superposition, any arbitrary unit vector, you can also express in terms of basis vectors with this thing. So that is actually what we know from the linear algebra, n-dimensional vector space. These things has to be satisfied. But if you see the previous discussions, all these discussions here, We started with wave function psi, and they are decomposed, and they follow also this orthonormality condition, and you can expand them, and also this is arbitrary wave function. I mentioned, and arbitrary wave functions you are expanding into the components projection in each of the basis functions. Basis function means all the eigenfunctions. So each eigenfunctions, that is the solution of the wave equation, they can be considered as a basis vector. So this psi1 can be a one basis vector, psi2 can be another basis vector, psi3 can be another basis vector. So if there are n solutions, so you can think of that all n psi's, they are corresponding to n basis vectors. Now any arbitrary wave function, like they are what we have considered arbitrary unit vector alpha, the arbitrary wave function also we can express in terms of weightage of the component of different basis vectors. So in a quantum system you get infinite solutions you can get. It is indeed you can get infinite solutions. Okay, some of the solutions may be not interesting, not important. So we don't consider. Only those important values is feasible and we can measure, we can manipulate, those will be useful. So that means all these psi solutions and their property, orthonormality condition, etc., they are actually one-to-one matching what we learn in linear algebra. So the important note here, mathematically, an arbitrary wave function can be represented in an n-dimensional vector space. An arbitrary wave function, that is whatever wave function we are just defining so far. We don't know what is the mathematical nature, what is the function of psi r. It can be sinusoidal, it can be Gaussian, it can be whatever complex form will be there, complex terms will be there. But at least we conclude that whatever solutions will be coming according to the assumption, interpretation, everything, they are actually infinite wave function. They are one-to-one matching with the n-dimensional basis vectors. Okay, that is the vector space. The vector space in which its eigenfunctions span is called Hilbert space. So Hilbert space, basically, you know, in linear algebra we call it n-dimensional vector space. But if you this n-dimensional vector space, if you relate to a practical system, here it is a quantum mechanical system, all the basis vectors you relate one-to-one there, okay, with a practical system, particularly quantum mechanical system, it is hugely used, then it is called a Hilbert space. So in Hilbert space, normally basis vectors are actually eigenfunctions. Right? That is the take-home message here. Any Hilbert space, and you are using quantum mechanics, then all the basis vectors can be considered as eigenfunctions. So the Hilbert space of a particular system has the same number of eigenfunctions of the Hamiltonian. So in the Hamiltonian, if you have suppose 10 solutions are there, so then you can say that Hilbert space, you have to deal those wave functions in a Hilbert space of dimension 10. But it can be infinite also. Okay, so I prepared up to this point today. I stop here, and maybe I will continue from here. Another thing that we are talking about the operator. Okay, that this wave function, you need to know whenever you operate on a wave function, you're supposed to get the value which can be actually, you can expect for a measurement from instrument, right? So that operator, what should be the form of that operator, mathematical form of that operator? For example, if it is a momentum operator, what would be the form? Position, what would be the form? And we'll see that whenever we are relating to these wave functions, that means this vector eigenfunctions to linear algebra. So in linear algebra, you know, everything actually you deal with matrix. Okay, so then what we'll discuss here, that wave functions, all these wave functions you can consider as a wave vector, and then operator like momentum operator or any other operator, if you want to operate on that vector, that should be, if you are just operating on a vector, not an analytical function, for example. If your wave functions are expressed by a vector, it's not a scalar wave function. Now vector means you have n different components will be there. Now if you want to operate on the vector, then what you can get, the wave function, whatever components are there, their components can be rearranged, meaning that vector can be rotated, right? So whenever you are operating on a vector eigenfunction, wave function, then the entire wave function that can be somehow disturbed or it will be rotated, because they are all emerging from a single point as a vector line, axis vector, basis vectors are there, and they should be emerging starting from a particular point. So in that case, we can actually consider this operator as a, we have to express this type of operators, whatever we are talking so far, they can be expressed as a matrix. So matrix can actually, if you multiply with a vector, then vector can be rotated. So that thing we'll be discussing afterwards. So I think a little bit of linear algebra part you need. If you know, that is good. Otherwise, try to learn at least first couple of chapters of any linear algebra book. That will be helpful. Okay. All right. Do you have any question? If not, online question you can put forward. We'll discuss.